Hey everyone, welcome back to John's Watch. Today I'm taking a look at a new game called Cat Detective Albert Wilde. This game was released on Steam on January 24th, 2025. Its regular price is $15.49 Canadian, or your regional equivalent, and is developed and published by Beyond Those Hills, which I believe is a development studio made up of two main developers, so a very small team on this one. In this game, you walk, talk, interrogate, joke, solve a mystery, and experience an old film noir setting with humanoid animal characters. A story of quantum theory and parallel universes served with a lot of humor. So just to get it out of the way, right at the start, this is a detective game. So it's a mystery, a thriller, there's twists and things like that throughout. So I'm not going to go too in-depth on the story at all. Not going to talk about what parts quantum theory and parallel universes play in the game, so this will be relatively spoiler-free. I finished the game with all achievements, which I think it's impossible not to get all achievements. You just get them as you play the game. But I finished the game in just over 5 hours, and I recorded the whole thing, and I think I'll just be using footage from the first 2 hours or so. Unless there's anything from later that I need to include to make a point, but it will just be like completely out of context, spoiler-free clips if those are needed at all. And I guess just to give a quick overview or a quick my thoughts, I really liked this. I thought it started off very, very roughly actually, and that's possibly due to the aesthetic. It's black and white, it's a 4:3 aspect ratio. You're allowed outside of the 4:3 aspect ratio for your HUD, which shows you items that you've got in your inventory, and also whether your journal, your quest journal has updated. But otherwise, the actual gameplay is contained to this 4:3 almost square resolution. It's all black and white. It's got this film grain over everything that you can't get rid of, and yeah, the first 15 minutes or so, I was like, I'm not sure about this. And by the end of the game, absolutely loved it. So yeah, this is a recommend from me because I thought this was a blast. You play as Cat Detective Albert Wilde. This game is set in kind of a 1930s world where every person is some kind of animal. Like there's a bird who is a newspaper seller. Albert's bookie, so he can get money, is a moose. One of his friends, sort of, who works on the police, is a female police officer called Betty, and she is a deer. So all kinds of wonderful animal characters in this game, and I mean, obviously, the art style is very unique. It's quite unsettling, I think, at first. If you just look at the screenshots or you watch the trailer before this video, I think it's got quite an unsettling air. Everything looks a little bit like puppets, kind of. I don't know. I thought it looked a little bit creepy, and it's not really. It's really just a very fun story. But yeah, I think the aesthetic they've gone for is one of the most unique I've ever seen. So you are the private investigator, Albert Wilde. Like, I think most detective stories, you are kind of down on your luck as Albert, don't have much money, that's why he has to go to Rudy the Moose, his bookie, as I mentioned, because he owes Rudy a lot of money, because he's not really getting many cases. Something a little bit different from other detective games is you are an actual idiot. Albert Wilde is not a smart animal. Every single character remarks on it. Really don't know how he ended up as a detective. But yeah, pretty much every animal he encounters calls him stupid. He constantly says, he sums up the case, and then he's like, I didn't understand any of that. It's kind of quite a fun twist. I recently played Duck Detective, who is also a down-on-his-luck detective, very poor, needs a lot of money, but he's very smart. Eugene McQuacklin is a smart character, and so to come into this game where it's a similar premise of a down-on-your-luck detective, but this one's an absolute idiot, so it's a kind of a fun spin on it. The main case you're investigating, and you find this out probably within the first 15-20 minutes of the game, is there was a body discovered down at the warehouse district, and above the body basically there's a big hole in the roof, and there's something really strange about the body. It's a cat, but it doesn't look anything, or it looks surprisingly similar to Albert, but it's got weird stumpy legs and stumpy arms, and it's not wearing a nice suit like Albert is. And so yeah, there's a real mystery there, and basically the whole game is Albert trying to solve the mystery of where this body came from, who killed it, things like that. Gameplay-wise, even the store page describes it as kind of a mix between walking simulator and almost visual novel. Most of the gameplay comes from interviewing suspects and various characters and just talking to them, going through all the dialogue options, reading all their text as it comes up. None of the characters, apart from Albert, are voiced, but every time a line of dialogue comes up for them, there will be an animal sound that relates to that animal. If you're talking to a sheep, they'll do various baas and stuff as their dialogue goes along, and I never found it to be too repetitive. They've got a really good variety of animal sounds, so it's not like you're hearing like the same baa sound like every other line. I never noticed when they were repeated because yeah, they got a lot of good animal sounds. Albert is voiced. I don't like the voice actor they got for Albert, or I guess the style of voice acting they did for Albert. He's kind of done in like a Christian Bale Batman voice. He's got a really gruff, monotone voice, and I just found the voice acting didn't really match up to the character. When basically Albert's only voiced when he's internally monologuing, so just talking to himself or talking to you, the player, and when he's talking to other animals, he just meows and they baa back, and then he meows at them and they baa again. And I found when he was talking to other characters, he seemed, kind of dumb, because he is kind of dumb, but he had a lot of like exclamation marks in his text. He seemed quite emotive, I guess. And then you go to his internal monologue and he just sounds like this.
Once I get this caller into the archive, I can look for myself, and all it will take is a quick phone call to my local courier. I sure hope I paid my phone bill.
And so yeah, I just kind of found this bit of a disconnect between his internal voice and his external voice. So yeah, I like the fact that he's voiced. I definitely would have approached his voice acting quite differently. He wants to sound like a hard-boiled detective, but I think I wouldn't have given him the completely emotionless voice acting that he has. If I go back to Duck Detective, I thought Eugene McQuacklin's got quite a gruff voice, but he's got emotion in it, and I don't really know why they went for a completely emotionless voice for Albert here. The writing's really good. I did find a couple of times it kind of goes around in circles a bit too much. There were a couple of times when I got the gist of what a character was trying to tell me, but then I still had 4 dialogue options to go through, and I had to go through all of them before I could move on to the next part. And they all kind of said the same thing. And this didn't happen constantly, but it definitely happened a few times where I was like, okay, just get on with it. The character knows, I know what's going on. And some of them definitely, some of the dialogue encounters, I guess, felt lengthy for the sake of being lengthy. And I think they could have been cut down a little bit. Didn't happen too much, but it was noticeable when it happened. As you're playing a dumb detective, humor is obviously pretty essential to this game, and it is quite a funny game. I found myself laughing quite a few times. But I definitely felt that the game over-explained jokes quite a bit. There's some really clever jokes, especially relating to animals in here, and a couple of times I was like, oh yeah, that's funny. And then it would just straight up explain the joke. One of them was talking about a gang leader who, his name is Oran Gutan, so he's an orangutan. And Albert was talking to another character about how orangutan has, a long reach. He's got fingers in many pies, kind of thing. And it said he had a long reach. And I'm like, oh, that's funny because orangutans have long arms. And then the very next dialogue box was Albert saying, get it? Because he's an orangutan and they have long arms. And I was like, really? That was a very clever joke. And then you just explain it and it really loses its cleverness. And yeah, that definitely happens quite a few times. The game does seem to over-explain its jokes most of the time, unfortunately, which is a shame because, yeah, I think it dulls the impact of some of them. Each character is identified by a specific font color, so you can usually tell. Usually the camera is focused on which character is talking, but you can also identify them by what color the font is in the text box. Definitely noticed a fair few times where the text was colored the wrong color. Like if someone Albert's talking to, it is speaking, sometimes it would be in Albert's color, which again is not a huge problem because you can tell who's talking because the camera's focused on them. I just noticed it a few times, which did surprise me. Just going back to something I said earlier where I mentioned that sometimes it felt like some of the dialogue was just going in circles and kind of repeating itself. There was the one encounter that was super noticeable for me, was where Albert was interviewing a character at a bar. And I just reviewed my footage for it, and just talking to this character, just them going back and forth, just me choosing different dialogue options, or all of the dialogue options, and reading all the text. That was 15 straight minutes, which in a 5-hour game obviously isn't a ton, but when it's literally just, this is just a visual novel style at this point of just clicking through the dialogue, 15 minutes is crazy. There is more to the game than just the dialogue. Like, you move around small locations in first person and find evidence and things like that. But yeah, that one especially really dragged on, and I had to check, and yeah, it was literally 15 minutes straight. And yeah, that could have been cut down quite a bit. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter video because I just don't want to touch on the story too much. Gave you the broad strokes of kind of the beginning of it. But as any detective mystery game, I would recommend just playing it for yourself if this sounds interesting to you. Overall, I really, really liked it. Like I said, I did not love it at the start. I think the aesthetic was cool, but I definitely wanted an option to disable the film grain. Especially because the film grain isn't actually like high quality at all. Like if you're playing it on a big monitor, I'm playing it on a 2K monitor, you can see kind of chunks of artifacting on the film grain. And like the actual like textures in the game look good, but then you have this like quite chunky, gross looking film grain over all of it constantly. And so yeah, I would have liked an option to do something with the film grain, I guess. But yeah, like I said, after the first 15 minutes, I kind of moved past it and really got quite into the game and really enjoyed it overall. There you go, that was my final thoughts on Cat Detective Albert Wilde. Thank you guys very much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!